from Betty Paret's first Harp Book. And today I want to take a look at this because I think it's kind of interesting. It's not so hard, and yet it is, because it involves a lot of chords, a lot of coming off rather than connecting. For example, if we got to play those as single notes and connect them, it would be so much easier. Instead, this is such good practice for playing a chord, coming away from the string, and then smoothly getting to the next chord, as well as different size shapes, sixths, fifths, thirds. So let's take a look at that. And we're going to focus on the right hand because the left hand's not so complicated here. And again, if we look at this very beginning, what we see here is that the melody itself is actually basically a scale, right? We have this D to start with, and then it's just 5 notes in a row. D, G, A, B, C, D. So the thumb is just going up one string at a time. You can even practice that, right? So again, taking the time, when you're practicing it at least, to do a nice full close and then open. So to not feel that you have to stay close to the strings, you get to do a little bit of a raise. And then the bottom note, of course, is moving. So what's happening here is we're starting with a sixth. This is part of a G chord, right? So a G chord is G, B, and D. Those are the 3 notes that make up a G chord. And we're playing 2 of them, a B and a G. And this is called a sixth because if we start from the bottom string, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's 6 strings, including the beginning and end. So we call that a sixth. Then the thumb goes up 1 and we play a fifth. So it's D on the bottom. So this is a bit confusing because the hand kind of wants to go back to that same shape. But while the thumb goes up 1, the third finger goes up 2 strings. So that's just a little extra confusion there for the hand to know that it's now a smaller shape. And now again, the thumb goes up 1, but the bottom note goes up 3 strings to this G from the D, and it is a third. So we play it with 2 on the bottom. So to practice that, you might, for example, practice, this opening sixth. Can you play that with your eyes closed? Can you really groove that feeling of the sixth? And don't be afraid to come away from the strings, right? So that rather than say going here and trying to repeat like this, to feel that you could do a nice full close, a nice raise, and still come back and find that sixth. And you might do the same thing for this fifth then. Third. A little bit easier, I think, because there's less potential options. We know the second finger is not on the string right beneath the thumb. It's also not on the F. It's not a fourth down. It's just skipping one string. So I think there's a little more certainty in the hand in terms of finding that. But again, could you find that with your eyes closed, with a nice raise, nice full close, come away from the string, fall back down. And then maybe practicing, for example, going from the sixth to the fifth. You could go back and forth like that, or what you might do is play pause for a moment so that you are not training the hand to go back to that initial sixth, but getting used to the idea that there's going to be something new coming. We're trying to break it down. We're not trying to do all the notes, but we don't want to also maybe train the hand to automatically go back here. So we do. Again, maybe you could start to do that with your eyes closed to really feel the change in shape. And again, the fact that it could be secure, you don't have to stay right next to the strings. You get to close and raise and fall back down. Again, if we're playing it quickly, we might do a smaller amount of close, but for now, to do a nice raise, and then of course you could go from the fifth to the third. again maybe. So you don't want to over practice that, but it's worth doing some practice like that to kind of break down that little section, which I think is one of the trickiest parts of this piece, those changing intervals. So we march our way up, still thirds, coming down, we skip, right? So we've been going up in a scale. We go up to that E, we skip, and now we're going to retrace our steps. So there's, what we see here is that there's this chord that we arrive on, and then this chord is different, but this chord here and this chord here are the same, and this chord and this chord are the same, and this chord and this. So we're kind of going up and down the same way. The sixth, fifth, third, third. Here's that same C and A we played before, which leads us to the G and the B, the third. Then now here comes the fifth and the sixth. Great, so we can do the same practice of, can we play this third into this fifth? This one's maybe a little easier because in the music we have more time. We have twice as long as we do on the opening sequence because these are quarter notes, not eighth notes. Or the fifth to the sixth. Or that whole sequence. And the nice thing is we repeat that exact same sequence again. Great. A moment about the left hand. So we're playing these fifths, G and D. We play it again. Nice G chord. We play a D because here's this D chord. This one right here. And then we resolve into G. And we play an octave. The left hand kind of wants to go back to this fifth, G and D. So just remembering that fifth, fifth, single D, and now it's an octave this time. You could play the fifth again, it would sound fine, but let's try and match what's written and play the G octave. That was too many. There are half notes, not quarter notes. And again, it repeats. Then we get this middle section, because this piece is actually quite short. We have that first little 4-bar phrase, it repeats. We get a middle section of 4 bars, and then we get one more set of the first 4 bars. So really there's only 8 bars in the piece. So this middle section has its own particular little challenge, which is the thumb slide. So the rest of these are just thirds with 1 and 2. So boom, 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 and going down in a scale. Right, so that's fairly easy. That's kind of nice. But this, let's talk about that. So this is not the only way we could do this. What we're wanting to do is we're wanting to play, this 16th note has to be fairly fast. So we could just come off on all of these, go 1, 2 on all of them. 1, 2, 1, sorry, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. That. That's absolutely an option. It's not as efficient as doing some form of connecting. So it does limit our sort of top speed we could get on that. But I think this piece doesn't need to be super short. We don't need to have it be. I think we're fine. It is an option. It sounds pretty good. It's pretty easy. But I think partly this is an opportunity to learn a new technique potentially and to practice something, this thumb slide. Now there is another way we could do this, a way that I think is in some ways even more efficient, and maybe this is the way I would finger it as an advanced player, right, would be to do this 1, 3, 2, 4, because I happen to like that sound better than the thumb slide. But it requires a certain amount of finger independence, and I think it's, in terms of how this book is structured, I think the thumb slide is a perfect thing to do here. So again, we could do 1, 3, 2, 4, and place all of those, right? But we're going to do the thumb slide. So this thumb slide, what we're doing here is we're sliding the thumb onto the B, right? And I did an episode on slides years ago. You could check that out if you want. But basically, we're kind of locking the thumb into position, pushing the thumb onto the B. So we're not worried about playing the C. We're not thinking about playing it. We're thinking about just pushing the thumb onto the B. So far, so good. The tricky thing is then we're going to play 2 normally, just by closing. And we have to do that at the same time as sliding the thumb. So we might try to go play 2 and then play and slide the thumb, or slide the thumb, play 2. And then maybe they can happen at the same time. Maybe we take the 3rd finger off and practice. Practice just playing 2 and sliding the thumb if that feels easier than having the 3rd finger on. But getting used to that coordination and the danger, I think, is that it becomes a bit of a pinch. So making sure that the thumb doesn't drop too low, that we do a nice thumb slide, a nice close with 2. And then at that point, we play the thumb normally. So the danger here is that we slide the thumb again. We go, but we have to play slide and then play. And that's something you can practice as well. Just slide, play, slide, play, slide, play. So this leads to this type of technique where you can do sort of descending thirds with a thumb slide the whole way down. But for here, we just come off after playing 1 and 3. So beautiful. So a fun little technique to practice. Again, if you are, you could certainly do it with 1, 2 and come off on all of these, or you could do the 1, 3, 2, 4. But I think, as I say, it's a great chance to practice that thumb slide. And so then finally, let's just talk a little bit about the phrasing and the dynamics and how we want to shape this piece now that we've maybe got it under our hands a little bit. And so there you can see there's some dynamics suggested here. We starting reasonably soft. And then the crescendo, this little hairpin, showing that, there we go, showing that it's getting louder, right? And then getting softer again. All right. So, and that is typical of how a lot of music, how we experience a lot of music, that as the pitch rises, we tend to hear that as growing in intensity, and hence maybe wanting to crescendo, to get louder. And as it descends, we tend to hear it as maybe lessening in intensity and getting softer. So this crescendo, this dynamic that we're doing, this crescendo decrescendo, makes a lot of sense given the sort of what's happening in terms of the top note, the melody note. So a little bit of a crescendo, right? You can exaggerate that if you want to practice. So soft, soft, so louder, 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 loud, loud, softer, 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 softer. So it doesn't have to be a huge amount, but that sense of a little bit of rise in intensity and lowering in intensity is quite nice. We do it again, and on the repeat, you could consider adding a hint of an echo effect. So the first time, maybe not piano, but maybe mezzo piano to start with, you know, a decent volume to start with. And then we're hearing the same thing, so that's often a time when we could do a little bit of an echo, right? The sense of we played this, oh, it's echoing back to us. Same thing, but a little bit softer, or imagining a different instrument playing, or just something to give it a little bit of different color, different flavor to keep our interest, that it's the same notes we've heard, but it's a little bit different. And you can see that specifically marked here in the middle section. We're going to repeat those 2 bars. So I said it was 8 bars. It's actually only 6 bars of music, right? So a forte and then a piano, a sense of, here's the statement, these 2 bars. And a response. It's like, whether you want to do forte and piano, or maybe mezzo forte and mezzo piano. Again, for practice sake, doing a big extreme can be really good to get the ear accustomed to hearing the possibilities, the dynamic possibilities that you have. But then when you're actually playing it, maybe you don't want it to be a huge sort of in your face, this is super loud and then super soft, maybe somewhere a little subtler than that. And then at the end, again, we have this crescendo. And I'll mention something you could do on these Ds here before the end. Not a super important thing, but something interesting you could play around with in terms of the sound, the type of sound you're getting. And that is to replace the second one a little bit early to give it, the first one, a little bit of a semi-staccato, a little bit of a dry sound. You can find the right hand, even though it's not muffling anything, a little bit early. If you wanted, yeah, a little bit of a semi-detached sound could be nice. Or not, like you could play around with it, but anyway, yeah, so even though it's a short little piece, there's lots of interesting musical things to play around with, as well as working on trying to get this to be as smooth as if it were connected, right? To get a nice smooth sequence of chords where you're coming off. And the thumb slide. So, as I say, quite a lot in a short little piece. Hope you enjoy that, and I will see you soon for another episode of Harp Tuesday. Cheers.